Hello, welcome to our chat today. The eve of Mother's Day. Before we dive into discussing the symbolism of motherhood, I would like to wish all of you a happy Mother's Day. It's a date that is particularly marked by two feelings, which are love and gratitude, among the noblest feelings of humanity. Love, gratitude, recognition, generosity, which are so inherent to mothers, are feelings that, in the historical moment we are living, we need so much. I'm going to make a proposal to you, which you might find bold and even contradictory. May this be the best Mother's Day of your life. Then you might say to me, but how so? In the midst of isolation? How can it be the best Mother's Day of our lives? You just need to realize that only the body is isolated and the heart can expand. You can spread this feeling towards our mother, towards all those who need it. It's a time when the expansion of the heart is very necessary. Every year we experience a Mother's Day. People sometimes call it commercial, right? We buy a little gift, take it to our mother, for those who have her. And we live this more or less unconsciously, like a mechanical routine. Nothing against doing these things, but the more awareness we bring to these dates, the deeper they become. And today, when we can no longer follow this routine, we can no longer go out. To buy the little gift, make visits, we are compelled to engage with this day. With this celebration, but on a subtle level, a metaphysical level, a more human level. And this might make us experience it with greater awareness than we ever have before. Be careful with that story that's going around. Philosophy is completely against radicalism. Mother's Day is just a commercial day. You set the tone for any day through your will. You can make it a merely commercial day, or you can make it a human day. Virtues that encompass the process of motherhood are celebrated and practiced with greater intensity than at any other time. And perhaps there hasn't been, in our recent history, a moment when humanity needs more nurturing than now, more than being embraced. Like a fragile child who needs comfort, who needs affection, it is a moment to remember the generosity and love so inherent to mothers. Therefore, happy Mother's Day to you. And may it be lived with the greatest fullness possible for a human being, which is the fullness of consciousness. And now, yes, let's move on to our little chat as intended. It's a broad topic, one that might deserve more than one lecture, because it's one of the most recurring and profound symbols in mythologies. Every time I start, as you know, with the meaning of the word, and this word is mater. It's interesting because it comes from Proto-Indo-European, exactly in this way, mater, and you'll see it everywhere in the languages that are part of the Indo-European group. You'll see it from Sanskrit, the Avestan, Old Irish, Celtic, mater, Germanic, mutter, Old Slavic, mate, and so on. And in Greek, mater, Latin mater, Greek mater. This Greek is interesting because you'll understand. For example, Demeter as the mother goddess, and we will talk about her, responsible for the Eleusinian mysteries, which are mysteries built upon the love of a mother for her daughter. So this is an important element for us to understand. In Greece, it was represented as the celebration of what would one day become Mother's Day. But an equivalent celebration was the celebration of Rhea, the mother of the gods, who was the daughter of Uranus in Rhea, and who joins with Kronos and simply engenders Earth goddess Demeter, Hades, and Poseidon. In other words, that third Olympian generation all comes from Rhea. And she was considered by the Greeks the great mother, the mother of the gods, the mother of the divine beings responsible for manifestation. In Rome, it was more like Caecilia Meriaclis. Cybele was said to be the true mother goddess. It's funny that both Rhea and Cybele had an association with the lion, perhaps due to their strength. We think of a mother as a very gentle, very sweet being, but perhaps there is no being as strong. A mother to defend her young. Moreover, she is more than a lion. Even a small puppy, when you get close to her young, she turns into a creature capable of causing great harm. In other words, the strength, the determination that a being brings to light when it comes to dealing with it. To defend their children, so both were associated with a lion, see. The image of a mother so delicate, so gentle, yet they were represented by the symbol of a lion. Well, we will see as a curiosity that it's not just in languages. Proto-Indo, not only the languages descended from Proto-Indo-European, that we have this similar root. In languages that have absolutely nothing to do with the Indo-European root, it's the same thing. Look how interesting we have in Quechua here. In South America, madre, mama, mommy; in Korean, oma; in Hebrew, ima; in Chinese, mama. Interesting, right? Curious. And these are linguistic roots that have nothing to do with one another. What could be the reason for this? One reason suggested is that it might be a word originating from a baby's babbling. That babbling for food, but also for protection, for affection, that mama, 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 which is one of the first syllables a child learns to speak. This is associated with everything he desires. The embrace, the protection, the nourishment, the care, the love. And this became associated, then, with this being that encompasses all these elements. He nurtures, he protects, he soothes. It's the figure of the mother. Probably that's where this special name comes from, the one who fulfills all the needs of the beloved being. Gives them a cradle, gives them a lap, gives them food, gives them protection. This is the most remote origin, as it is thought so far, of the name Mother. Well, Mother's Day is already a historical date. Relatively recent, there is talk of a young Methodist, Anna Jarvis, who, in honor of her mother, was the first to come up with this idea. She would have launched a campaign in favor of a day dedicated to mothers. And this day would have started to take place exactly on May 9th of 1914. It was the first Mother's Day that took place, May 9th of 1914. Look how interesting. I don't know what the connection is, but it's just a hunch of mine, because the spring in the northern hemisphere, the so-called boreal spring, the spring in the northern hemisphere, it goes exactly from March 20th to June 21st, that is, and spring is always closely associated with this blossoming of the earth. Mater, the mother, the great mother is nature itself. Therefore, I don't know why Mother's Day, when it was created, in a circumstance that had nothing to do with this, with a recent date, 1914, a little over 100 years, 106 years, this date was set exactly in May, which was within this spring cycle of the northern hemisphere, which was exactly when the pagan peoples of the past celebrated Mother's Day. Exactly at that moment. Is that right? Therefore, this young woman named Anna Jarvis, an American Methodist, is said to have sparked the creation of this day through her advocacy as a tribute to her own mother. In other words, Mother's Day is a celebration that was born to honor a mother, Anna Jarvis' mother. She later became upset because the day was heavily dominated by the commercial aspect. She tried to request revoking the creation of the day, but in the end, the day remained and indeed became a very strong commercial date. After Christmas, it's the first, the strongest. But, as I mentioned to you, we are the ones who set the tone for each occasion. So, I don't think celebrations are bad, even those considered very commercial. We can decide whether they will be commercial or not. There's nothing wrong with giving a little gift. I myself enjoy giving presents. But the main tone should be recognition, gratitude, love, generosity, remembering maternal feelings as something fundamental to life. It's no wonder that every mother who is a servant of life has these feelings so close to the surface. Continuing. you can notice something interesting. In the animal world, even those of you who have little dogs at home, which are considered quite evolved animals, but the concern for the offspring lasts only until they become independent. The big puppy and the mother doesn't really want much to do with them anymore. The relationship, when based solely on instinct, is one that lasts only until the offspring's autonomy. In other words, initially, when they can take care of themselves. In the case of humans, it lasts a lifetime. A child is a commitment for your entire life. For every part of their life that you can reach, they will always be within reach and, in a way, as the saying goes, for a mother, her children never grow up. It's that embrace we know will always be there for us as long as we have it. So, it's interesting, this human component of recognition and the extension of this generosity of giving life. Because she doesn't just give life to her child, she gives her own life. The dedication that a mother, more or less efficient, must have to ensure that her child is well, to ensure they are healthy, so that they can overcome the adversities of childhood illnesses, the little pains and the big pains, so that they can prevail through growth. The challenges of pre-adolescence, of adolescence, require an enormous, immeasurable dedication, and therefore, the human sentiment. It is more than just that biological dependency. It is a feeling of recognition, of giving, and on the other hand, of gratitude. Moreover, these two feelings converge at the moment we realize the importance of mothers in our lives. And that there is a date for this. I think it's good. It's a moment set aside for us to pause and remember how grand and important this is. The mother, she is a gateway to life, a great collaborator and ally of nature. That's why it's said that a society, when it becomes heavily polarized around masculine values, it becomes indifferent to nature. It's an almost inevitable consequence. It starts to become predatory. It begins to leave the earth devastated when it loses the feminine attributes. When it starts to consider that the attributes of the feminine are inferior, this doesn't happen just on the part of the men. Not just men, but women themselves, in order to stand out in society, often deny the values of the feminine. And one of the fundamental values is precisely this dialogue among mothers. Look, folks, I'm not saying that everyone has to be a mother to have this experience. Being a mother on the physical plane is an optional experience. We will see that there are possibilities to be a mother on various other, more subtle planes. But when a man, when a human being, in this case a woman, needs to break away a bit from their selfishness, requires a selfless giving to another being, the experience of motherhood can be very enriching. It can sometimes even be extremely necessary. No one is obligated, but some truly need this experience. And nature requires that some do so. Thus, life prevails. And it is one of the most beautiful moments in nature. It is the moment of the creation of life. You will see that, in myths, the moment a woman gives birth to a child. It is equivalent to the moment when nature gives birth to the first form of life. And, before that, when the primordial substance gives birth to the manifested cosmos. In the mythical, symbolic mindset, all births are equivalent. Remember the Kybalion. I've spoken so many times about the principle of correspondence. What is above is below. There's the same mystery that exists when the primordial substance, upon receiving the ray of spirit, generates the cosmos. It's the same mystery when a woman brings forth from within herself a new life, an absolutely independent spiritual spark, which comes to reside within her until it receives its own body. This is a secret of nature that, no matter how many times we've seen it, millions of times, we can't help but be amazed. I also brought for you a commentary on an article that fell into my hands. The other day, I came across an article from the public health journals of Fiacres, which talks about motherhood among teenagers. They said something that I hadn't stopped to think about until then. that teenagers who become pregnant, of course, this is a negative element that we should seek to avoid. But many of these teenagers who are at risk often see the child as a redeeming element. That takes them off the streets, that helps them gain the moral strength to leave drugs, in other words, a stimulus to live. Many of them see the birth of the child as a redemption of their own lives, a motivation to fight. Now they have something to fight for. This is not my interpretation. This is literally stated in that Fiacruz article. I found it very beautiful. You realize there is an interdependence where the child depends on the life that the mother gives them. But in a certain way, the child also gives back to her a bit of that life. It gives her an incentive to grow, to be better. To have something to give to that little child, that small creature, she immediately develops a bond that never ends. I found it very beautiful. This relationship is very interesting, as if one saves the life of the other, reciprocally. Continuing. As I mentioned to you, in the womb of the earth, in the womb of a woman, in the womb of the primordial universe, life places a tiny seed, and that will develop and give rise to a new body. When we have a little child who goes to school, starts kindergarten, they usually give them those little cans to plant a bean and watch a plant grow. I find it interesting because every child is amazed to see that from that little bean they planted in the womb of the earth, a life is born. And a life that will grow and soon will produce new little beans. This miracle, this mystery of life, which is the generation of one life emerging from within another, and another, and another, and another, is always a spectacle, always a ceremony. Of course, sometimes people tell me, and they are right when they say, well, a mother is the one who raises. Yes, motherhood, perhaps the most complicated period, exactly. In the moment of creating this child, even Cruz y Souza towards his own path. And yet, her work is not finished. This is extremely complicated. But the fact is that we cannot disregard conception either. Everything is beautiful. Sometimes both things cannot be done by the same person. But everything that involves motherhood is very beautiful. The sleepless nights, the early mornings when you see the baby waking up with the gray of the day breaking, it seems like the baby. And the day is 2 children. Our 2 children. All of this is very mysterious. All of this is very poetic. In other words, the process of motherhood as a whole is a work of art. From conception to generation to creation, it is a work of art. We cannot disregard any of these stages. An interesting thing as well that I would like to highlight for you is that there is an impulse in nature. And in human nature, it is a powerful drive to seek eternity. So, the way physical nature seeks eternity is precisely by placing a new body in the place of the worn-out one. In other words, the generation of children is a way for matter to persist and eternalize itself. We survive through our descendants. This is the physical part of eternity that is produced through the generation of children. But we can see that the generation of a child brings us very, very close. Both those we are living and those we are appreciating bring us very close to the mystery of life, also giving us a great desire to understand this mystery of life more deeply, so that we can take hold of it, and may it never leave us. In other words, motherhood instills in us, ignites in us a desire for eternity, to get so close to life, to the point of unraveling its mysteries and never straying from it. Therefore, this mystery, sometimes we don't reflect on it our entire lives. And when we see a life begin to move inside us, we are astounded by it. It's not possible. There is within me a human being, with all that is divine, with all that is grand, that encompasses a human being, with a mysterious life. And how does this generate within us? A reflective tendency. A tendency to want to better understand the language of life. And perhaps find a plan within ourselves. Where does this inner child exist? Eternally young, eternally pure, which is our spiritual essence, our divine essence. That never ceases and eternalizes not through substitution, but through endurance. the more aware we are of this child within us, waiting for us to also bring it to light. What exactly is this? The process of seeking wisdom is about bringing our essence to light. We begin to realize that life, on some level, perpetuates itself. It doesn't eternalize through substitution, but through the illumination of consciousness in what we have always been. Therefore, it's a wonderful moment for reflections on the meaning of life. Few experiences, like motherhood, make us reflect on life and its mysteries. Saint Mechthild of Hackborn, a German saint who lived in 1240, she said something very interesting. I brought a little excerpt from a book, which is the Book of Special Grace. She says the following: Christ is a father in creation, brother in the kingdom, mother in redemption. In other words, motherhood would be, according to this saint's vision, also a divine attribute. So, when we are parents, moreover, in creation, in that moment when we bring new ideas to the world, new values to the world, when we are brothers in the kingdom, that is, when we develop fraternity, and when we are mothers in redemption, meaning always redeeming our fruits from pain, from suffering, always watching over your creation, therefore, we are bringing to light the divine attributes within us. I find this very beautiful because she places motherhood as one of the elements of the triad of divine attributes. Motherhood, as this attribute of redemption, means that it is also God within us. And living it consciously is also bringing this divine nature to light, which is another kind of birth. Just as a child emerges from the body, the consciousness of human nature emerges from that unconscious where it was hidden. It's a new birth that can also be produced. Just to show you how ceremonial this fact is, how much of a ceremonial moment it is in a human being's life. Well, as I mentioned to you, many divine figures throughout history, feminine ones, great mothers, holy goddesses from various traditions, had names that resembled water. Or they were derived from the word water or were similar. Remember in Genesis, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. And then we see this initial moment where the waters of the primordial substance are fertilized by a spark of the Spirit. And from there, everything emerges, all of creation. That was a birth. The moment when the earth, you plant your seeds, and these seeds grow and give life. That was a birth. In the moment that comes, animals have their offspring. The moment a human being brings another human being and presents them to the light, that is also a birth. All of them are births. And it's interesting because within this principle of correspondence from the Kybalion, all things that are aligned with the same symbolism are not more or less important. They are all equally important. It's the mystery of creation that repeats itself every time a mother is born. Because when a child is born, a mother is also born. And this is mythical. It's symbolic. It's incredibly beautiful. We should learn to see these other dimensions of reality, to more deeply appreciate the sacred moments of life. Mircea Eliade said, "The sacred is the function of giving meaning." If we look at the issue of motherhood from all its angles, it becomes a ceremony. It's interesting still, Mircea Eliade continues talking a bit about this, the words, mother in womb. Often they are related in various languages to fertility and, at times, are used in relation to other phenomena besides the female womb. For example, the issue of mythology is full of earth's wombs, like caves that give birth to precious stones, as if it were a birth. Mines that give birth to gold, as if it were also a birth. The medieval alchemists spoke of their alchemical furnaces, the athanor, which gave birth to the philosopher's gold. All of this is a mythical and symbolic representation of the same thing. A moment when something is fertile and brings to light what it has best, the flora, with its precious fruit. In other words, all these elements of discovering a diamond inside a cave. discovering gold inside a gold mine, or finding the philosopher's gold within an alchemist's crucible. All of this is birth. All of this is motherhood. There are also us, when we dream of bringing into light a human being who embodies all the values we dream of. And we work and dedicate our lives so that it becomes our philosopher's gold. It's all more or less the same idea. This idea of motherhood echoes through the four corners of time and history like a sacrament. Mircea Eliade says, for example, that the Oracle of Delphi, the Greek Delphi, where they celebrated the mysteries of Apollo, a priestess, known as a Pythia, was seated on a bench, a tripod, where she sat near a spot in the earth from which vapors emerged. And from these vapors, she would give her prophecies. He says that Delphi also has, in its origin, in its etymology, the idea of a womb. Mater comes from mater, which means mother. In other words, Delphi was also a way in which a woman brought to light the voice of the gods. This is highly symbolic. Folks, consider, first of all, that Greece was not a civilization that placed much emphasis on the feminine. It was a patriarchal religion, Orpheism. Why, when it came to receiving the voice of Apollo, did it have to be a woman? Because she was the one who had to receive these vapors and bring to light the voice of the gods. Notice that it is a way of representing motherhood in a unique way, because life is divine. And through the woman, life, which is a divine gift, comes to light as well, comes into the world. In other words, more or less, the same idea that the feminine is responsible is the emissary through which the divine voice reaches the world, through which divine gifts come into the world. This is motherhood. And then she refines, nurtures, and sculpts this precious stone that was taken from the cave so that it reaches its utmost beauty. Eleusis is also another beautiful story. The mysteries of Eleusis, which are one of the most significant historical events we know of in Greece. In ancient times, they told the story of Demeter, who had lost her daughter to Hades, the god of the underworld. Demeter is exactly Demeter, the mother goddess. Remember that in Greek, meter is the derivation of that original mater. In other words, Demeter, the mother goddess, loses her daughter to Hades, the god of the underworld, and manages to have her Persephone returned to her. Half of the year, and she stays in Hades for half of the year. It's interesting because, for them, this represented, on one hand, the physical nature, where life hides away in the fall and winter and comes back to light in the spring and summer. But it was also the representation of the human soul, which at a certain moment hides within matter, and at another moment blossoms in the spiritual world. In other words, it was a symbol that held meaning for both the physical and the metaphysical. And the mysteries of Eleusis, which were considered the greatest in Greece, told nothing more, nothing less, in a symbolic way, than the story of a mother and her daughter. This story is so laden with symbolism, so sacred it is. Do you notice within India? For example, every god has his Shakti, which precisely represents fertility. Shakti is the fertile earth. So if you have, for example, a god, and he doesn't have his feminine counterpart, he has no way to bring his gifts down to the world. He cannot accomplish his deeds in the world. So he needs the fertile earth, he needs fertility for his gifts to come into the world. So there is always a necessity for the gods to have a feminine counterpart, because their gifts are reborn into the world through them. The gifts of the divine are reborn into the world as children. Without this Shakti, they cannot do anything in the manifested world. So they are the companions, but at the same time, the mothers of the divine gifts, so that they may emerge in the world, clothed in a body. The Celtic triskelion is also another interesting thing because it represents the feminine gifts. The three phases of the goddess are nothing more than the feminine gifts. So it speaks of the purity of the maiden, the protection, the vitality given by the mother, and the wisdom bestowed by the crone. The three gifts of the feminine. This purity is not related to physical purity, but rather to a purity that makes her so akin to nature, so conducive to generating life, so conducive to generating children on all levels: physical, psychic, mental, spiritual. In other words, this fertile and pure earth that waits to receive the seed to give life to the world. Then you have the mother, this giver and sustainer of life. And you have the crone as the wise one. And it's very interesting that we see these as human potentials. The feminine potentials, pardon me, represented by a symbol. And the mother as the center, as the heart. Well, I said, and I haven't had the opportunity to check much in my etymological dictionaries, but it seems to me that it makes some sense that the word crown, if you trace it back to the Proto-Indo-European root, comes from a word that is esker, which means curvature. And this same curvature, when it goes to the Greek koron, it was koron, which meant a curved object, a tiara. And then we will see that it goes to Latin. Koron would have given rise, at the same time, to the crown as we know it, but also to something curved, such as, for example, horns, or that crescent moon we see on Artemis' head, or those horns we see on the head of Hathor, or that crown we see on the heads of mothers in general, from various traditions. It would be the same idea, the idea as if it were a receptacle, the receptacle of life. And furthermore, when it comes to, for example, Our Lady, it still conveys that idea of majesty of a queen. But initially, this curved object, this curved tiara upon the head, represented her exactly as a receptacle of life, as the one who receives the struggle and gives life its course, which flows through her. An attribute that comes from long before we thought of the existence of Mother's Day. Notice that our Mother's Day, for it to be more than just a commercial date, it should be imbued with all the echoes, with all these symbolisms of history. This story has always been sacred for all the peoples that have existed. An interesting thing, we also realize that every time we give birth to a being, in fact, I love this accent, I can't help but say it. Sometimes people don't know very well and right, so gave birth without the crisis. It's completely wrong. It's like you're taking the light and giving it to the child. No, the light cannot be given to anyone. The light is its own master. The light is a symbol of the spirit, a symbol of the divine, a symbol seeking wisdom. You have to use crisis there. You gave the child to the light. To the child, you donated to the light, meaning to the divine, to wisdom, so that this child may serve it. You didn't bring her into the world in vain. You brought this child to offer her to the light. And this is a symbolism that, if we thought about it carefully, would have a very special tone. We have brought a servant of the light into the world. We aren't going to take anything to give him. He will be a gift to serve the luminous, the righteous, the good, the divine. And we realize that the one who gives birth also renews herself. It's as if she is reborn as well. Many times, people develop a mother and she becomes a little child, becomes a baby, then a child, then a teenager. She doesn't just change, she develops an empathy to be with her child in all situations. But something in her also rejuvenates. Something in her becomes closer to her essence, as if she had lived the experience of serving the light. And who serves the light for just a moment? This experience imprints on your life in a way that you never forget. Now there is a reference. One day, I took part in a sacred act. And now your conscience will demand it, will long for this moment. One day, I took part in a ceremony of life. And your conscience will demand it. Why not once more? As Leonardo da Vinci once said, he who has been to the heavens will walk the earth always looking up, longing to return there. In other words, for a moment, the mother participated in the greatest mystery of the universe. She served the divine and will live with this longing to serve again, to rise to that point once more. Not having more children, but serving to bring forth another kind of offspring. bringing another kind of work into the world, equally divine and also in need of your birthing. So, giving birth in the material world means creating a body. Giving birth on the emotional plane means generating elevated, noble, true feelings. Not vulgar emotions, but genuine feelings. Giving birth in the mental world means generating ideas, enlightening ideas that open paths, that restore hope to human beings. And giving birth in the spiritual world means generating virtues, generating wisdom. Every human being, then, regardless of being male or female, is called to some level of motherhood. Nature always awaits us to be fertile, but sometimes it doesn't need us to create more bodies. Not everyone has this nature, even among women. It needs us to generate feelings. It needs us to generate pure, noble ideas. It needs us to generate values, virtues, and wisdom. And these two are children, and these two are gifts we offer to the light. The light also needs this, because through them, it will also accomplish its work in the world. So, there are various births we can bring forth in our lives. The understanding of the mystery of motherhood shows us that it doesn't end when we create a body. It expects much more from us, because we have various planes and all of them are fertile. We exist in spirit, we exist in mind, we exist in emotions, and all of them are fertile. And all of them are eager to also bring forth their own offspring. And the world greatly needs these children as well. If we consider motherhood as just having children and raising them, well, that's not for everyone, as we've already mentioned. But motherhood, in its symbolism as the Great Mother, is something we can all live and should embrace. What I was talking to you about a moment ago, feeling that the world is in need of my fruits, and I still have so much to offer to the light. So, we arrive at one of the most precious attributes of motherhood, which is generosity. Always draw the best from deep within us, from that womb that exists on all planes. From the depths, that which we hold dearest, that which we cherish the most, that which we love the most. Bring it to light and offer it to the world. Generosity is a form of motherhood. This exchange is interesting because motherhood is generous and generosity is maternal. And we are living more and more moments where this generosity, as a fundamental attribute of motherhood, needs to be given to the world. I usually recommend, when people ask me what to do in critical moments like these, one act of generosity a day. An act of giving someone the best of what you have, as if it were a child. Deep down, we are all one big family, humanity, and even nature as a whole. In other words, before sleep, today I didn't give, I wasn't a mother. A phone call to someone who might be alone at home and feeling extremely needy. To say, I'm here, you can count on me. A bag of rice that you donate to an organization distributing food baskets. I'm here, we will get through this together, one act of generosity a day. It's a way to honor this maternal spirit that exists within all of us. Generosity is maternal, and this is for a lifetime. Because our soul, our essence, is eternally fertile. And it never stops being able to give birth to children, and this world is in great need of these children. If your lap is empty, fill it. Not necessarily with a child, but with a sense of purpose in life. Of course, make a difference, add value to the world. Leave here better than we came, grow and set an example to the world of how to grow. Anyone who brings divine gifts to the world is performing a birth, and a birth as ceremonial as any other, and as necessary as any other. In other words, everyone who takes a moment to celebrate Mother's Day, stop to think if you have already brought all your gifts to light. If you have already delivered your message to the world, they are your children too. The Buddhist Dhammapada says, more than 1,000 meaningless words, one is worth more if it brings comfort to the listener. Have you spoken your word? Have you delivered your gifts? This is celebrating motherhood. and I conclude our conversation here. I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day, and may you heed my advice. Every day, a maternal act, an act of generosity, whether you are a man or a woman. One act of generosity a day makes us all fertile. Now, I would like, if you allow me, to close with a poem, a piece of poetry. That was written on the occasion of my mother's passing. And it is a tribute to all mothers. And also especially for those who no longer have their mothers close to them, like us. Many whose mothers have already fulfilled their missions and have departed. He calls himself for giving me birth again. Your body, your things, the perfume, the vanity, the glass on the bedside table, empty, everything is there, she is no longer. The trivial expressions, the taste for her favorite fruit, the keys not knowing where, never to be found. Everything echoes in memory, everything is there, she is no longer. Where will she be then? In disparate traditions, directions so unequal in the skies, paradises, alongside celestial beings, in an Eden parceled with houses and hospitals. Awake, telling stories, sleeping in eternal peace. Where, then, will you be? And if you are not, and if you simply are, why is being mandatory? Why be? Is the accessory of our ignorance necessary? Addicted to a dress and substance, knowing nothing of being because it is not? When I lose my body, glass, and vanity, who will I be? And if I already am now, in this moment, what will I truly lose? If I already find it now, where is the anxiety about not losing my glass, body, and substance? Where is the fire? Where is it not? In the friction of my hands, it is already announced, and then, suddenly, it disappears. But always the fleeting trace of your presence emerges and warms me. Where are your cells, particles, heart? Is it your foundation that gives you combustion? Mobile, so alive, luminous, warm, something in you is like that too. Also within me, sometimes it seems like day, even when night falls. Something is within me, and the friction of what is illusory sometimes awakens and ignites me. It's like a fiery blood in a land where there are no bodies. There are no glasses, there are no veins. Perhaps there exists an unlimited flame that crafted this infinite universe to give birth to small flames from its frictions. Mysterious science that from friction gives birth to consciousness. Perhaps the tiny flame reflects it, like a mirror in a diminutive dimension. And this flame, with the veil that limits it as it stirs its fire and combustion, destroys the foundations, incinerates the division, and transforms into a singular and subtle fire that never exists or existed, but always is. Where are you? I will ask no more. I know I find you when from the friction of this life I extract light at the same point. You brought me the light. You are indeed of the light, an unlimited and wandering expression, confined by illusion, but free and eternal when the illusion ends. On a day when the light I received, yours and indeed from so many others, cast sparks that the strong wind carries forward and reaches you, receives the fiery kiss I send you, coming from the small light, which is your daughter, that against all wind and storm insists and stokes the fire of will and still shines. That's it. Thank you very much. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Do we have questions? Let's go.
So let's go. Having a mother who recently lost her daughter. How to help? Words fail.
It's very difficult. Perhaps it's one of the most difficult moments in the world, because we expect our children to outlive us. We need to have this tranquility. From the quote I always mention by Helena Blavatsky, "The one who does their best does all that can be expected of them." Each of us, and traditions call it destiny, call it karma, has a need for experience, whatever name you want to give it. And this need for a being's experience, no matter how much we love them, we cannot change. We all came here to gather experiences, to expand our consciousness. And for that, there are paths that each one needs to walk, shorter or longer. And we cannot, not even with all the love in the world, go against the laws of nature. Also because love springs from the laws of nature and cannot go against them. So, accept and step away a bit from illusions, including those of the world. That living a long life in terms of length is necessarily better than living a short one in terms of length. That life is not measured only by length, but by depth. Depending on the quality of life, the quality of love that this being received, they may have had a very profound life in a very short time. And many are extremely long-lived, living an entire life on the surface, skin deep, without any kind of deep feeling. Without any feeling that defines their existence as human, always very superficial, always being tossed around by circumstances. So there are many elements in nature that we are unaware of. And at the same time, we know that life is extremely fleeting, extremely fleeting. In a very short time, we will all find ourselves at the same point. Now, what life wanted to give as an experience to each one, it's not for us to judge. It's not for us to say whether it was too little or too much. Life is fair in all its expressions. We can be at peace with ourselves. Even when we say, "I did my best," those who do their best do everything that can be expected of them. Any more questions?
My name is Nevis. Professor, as a mother, what is the feeling of bringing your daughters into the world?
The feeling of having brought my daughters into the world, as I mentioned to you first, is a mystery. Because it is literally unbelievable. It's a common understanding that there is a human being within you, that your body is capable of generating other bodies, that your life is capable of generating another life. Therefore, this mysterious moment, this somewhat magical moment, then, fundamentally, when you first look at that child, the thought is, I have to be better. Because if I'm not better, I don't create space for them to grow. I don't create space for them by reflecting on me, to fulfill their destiny. In the case of my two daughters, they have always been my greatest motivation to be better. In other words, when the simple order of life, when the simple dharma, when the simple sense of duty is not enough to call us towards growth as human beings. Love is powerful and has a profound calling. When you look at that being and say, if I'm not better, I have nothing to offer them. Certainly, it nips at your heels and forces you to improve yourself, to grow more and more. There is a philosophical phrase that I really like, which says, the best thing we can do for those we love is to grow as human beings. And that's what motherhood has provided me. First of all, after that, many other things. Any more questions?
You might ask, the earth is a great mother.
Unless, of course, the mater, the earth mater, which is present in so many mythologies, is a mother. You will see that the primordial substance that generated the entire cosmos is also a great mother. Some mythologies, in fact, present these two contrasts. In Egypt, you will see Isis, but you will also see Hathor. If you see a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, the other day, I was promoting this lecture. I wanted to take this excerpt from Leonardo da Vinci's painting, which is the Madonna with the child in her arms. In other words, the great mother and a mother. There is the cosmic mother, which is this substance that gave rise to all creation. And the earth is a mother too. And she does exactly that. All the materials that make up our body came from her. It is from her womb that it came. The matter of our body, the nourishment of our body, comes from her. Inspiration for our soul comes from her. I told you that sometimes caves. The minds are considered as wombs. And that's how it is. The entire body of the mother is fertile and is constantly giving birth to children. Always precious. Anything else? The questions have now concluded. And once again, I wish you all a conscious Mother's Day, where you overflow with generosity, which is the greatest attribute of a mother, always. And to all mothers, my congratulations and a big hug to each of you.